1890, two young Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace boarded a train in New Jersey and made their way from east to west to the new state of Washington. With little in hand but their faith and a strong sense of purpose, their mission was to create a hospital grounded in skill and loving compassion in Bellingham, Washington, which was then a town of loggers, miners, and dreamers. Thus began a Northwest journey that has resulted in the legacy of the PeaceHealth system of healthcare that continues the mission today.
I think that for me, being at PeaceHealth is really about relationships. When I came here, I really honestly didn't understand what the mission would mean in terms of my practice. But now that I've been here for 10 years, I really get it. PeaceHealth wants me to give the best care that I know how, and it doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, what their insurance is. The doors are open. We're here to take care of you. To me, that's really powerful, and it's right at the center of everything we do.
That deep, deep regard for the individual and the dignity of each individual is because of this drive for justice.
It is the privilege of participating in a ministry that essentially is about healing, it's about compassion.
Ready for some breakfast?
Making it flame up in the hearts of those who work with us and to whom we truly entrust the continuance of the heritage that we leave, with a heart and a focus on every patient and every family who comes to us.
We had a big house. My husband owned his own business. I worked for an attorney. I mean, it was a really good life. And then my husband lost his business. All of a sudden, we had to make this big decision. What were we going to do? My grandma owned a property down here in Florence, so we packed our entire lives up and moved. It pretty much meant we were homeless living in our tent.
They were very capable individuals. And so then to suddenly find themselves in very kind of mean and lowly conditions, I think was embarrassing. They really had nothing. There was no electricity or running water on the property.
And a 2-year-old that was potty training. They were fine for the first month and a half. Every night we'd play board games by propane light, and then it got old. Winter was coming, it was raining every day. Overnight, I had gotten 106-degree fever. And so I went into the hospital. I told them, I think something's wrong. I've had 106-degree fever. And they're like, 100.6? And I said, no, 106.0. And they got very concerned. What happened, I ended up with a MRSA staph infection. I wasn't that concerned until they started saying MRI and CAT scan and surgery, and you're not going home. I was worried to death. I'm like, we have no medical insurance, we have no money. And everybody told me, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We need to get you well first. Don't even think about it. We have ways to help you.
You need it for the baby.
She was in a great deal of pain. Initially, we did about 5 operations, but people's needs go beyond their surgical needs. And it became apparent to us that there was more underneath the surface.
The treatment team, doctors, nurses, chaplains, social workers, began to coalesce around her needs, saying, okay, I think we can get her some funds here. I think we can get her a night's stay here. We can get food. And really, not only the PeaceHealth team, but the entire community wrapped around this family. And there is a sense of partnership.
This was somewhat of a dramatic case, but I think we would do it again tomorrow for someone else.
There's an amazing amount to be learned from our brothers and sisters who are less fortunate than we are. I was in El Salvador during the Civil War. In many ways, it was exactly what our sisters who opened any of our missions did. They went with what they had, confident that working with the people, they could accomplish what they were supposed to do. I learned several things. I learned that here was a people who couldn't tell you any theology, but they knew God. Their homes were destroyed, and yet these people had hope. It was an interesting lesson, and it stays with me. When the war was over, a group gathered in PeaceHealth to ask our PeaceHealth people, would you be willing to give some time to go down and provide some of this basic health care? And it's proved an absolutely phenomenal gift. People who tend to come to work at PeaceHealth come not just because of the work, but because of what they sense in the other people who are there.
We came to this small island community 11 years ago. It is the friendliest, loveliest place I could ever imagine.
The only thing we worry about on our street, it's not people, it's the bears.
So Grant, how's the summer been so far? It's been good.
It was after his birth that I had the problems, a postpartum hemorrhage. I was rushed to surgery, and my husband was left with our newborn son in his arms. We went through weeks and weeks of agonizing recovery. These nurses came to my bedside day and night, and they would lay their hands on me, and they'd bring him meals. They would sometimes just sit at my bedside, and that team of nurses and physicians saved my life. It took a traumatic event like this to help us realize what we truly wanted, which was to become registered nurses. And this was the healthcare team that we wanted to be a part of.
You're welcome.
We have a common culture, and that culture in virtually all of our regions is palpable, combined with the fact that there are unique characteristics of each one of these regions. There's also an ability, when you're working together, to create an outcome that's greater than the sum of the parts.
People put their heads together and share the wealth of experience and knowledge there is across the system.
By virtue of being part of an innovative health system that is always kind of pushing us to do better and setting pretty high bars, we can provide really good quality care. When we have critically ill patients who need to be medevac, I call up the doctor in Bellingham. He's at his computer looking at all the data, including the EKGs, CT scans.
The next thing I know, I wake up in the emergency room of the Craig Health Clinic. Can have IVs in me, and what's going on here? And Doc says, well, I'm going to medevac you to Bellingham. And they tell me that I need a triple bypass.
He was one of the lucky ones. He had an impending heart attack, basically.
We were having breakfast the morning of the surgery, and he stopped by to see us and explain what was going to happen. Everybody there helped. We're Catholic, and so having the priest come in and give, Dennis communion. I was going to say last rites, but it was communion. I just think PeaceHealth did a really good job of taking care of the whole family.
I'm not just operating on a heart. I'm intervening in that patient's life and in that family's life. It comes as a package. They're like another member of the healthcare team. People know underlying that it's potentially a life and death situation, and they deserve and need to understand what the patient is going to be facing.
He's a good guy. I'm kind of glad he's around, too.
I'm glad you are, too.
Okay.
I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital in Bellingham. I got my first spanking from a sister of St. Joseph of Peace. And look what happened.
What I see is a hospital that sees itself as much bigger than the walls of this building, but rather that extends itself to the community in a very open way. You know, my favorite part of the day is when I go in the patient's room and close the door.
La mano o tiene hormigueo ahí.
I want you to do that on your own. I want you to go all the way up.
Creo que lo haga usted sola. Saque la mano así.
One of our target populations is the migrant farm worker community. We also care for a lot of the homeless, and to me that's extremely important.
So how far are you out from chemo? 4 months? Yeah, when people get a cancer diagnosis, it's as if they have a scarlet letter C. I believe I have the opportunity really to change that mindset and say, no, it may be a long road, but after you're done, you will be a breast cancer survivor, just like a high blood pressure survivor. My goal is to get them to have as much of a normal life as possible. It's humbling, and I'm very honored to be at that position in their life with them. Susan came to see me for a palpable mass in one of her breasts, and I saw her not let the cancer change her at all.
I live in Rainier, Oregon, just across the bridge, the Lewis and Clark Bridge. There's nothing really around but property, trees. I have a breeding stock paint that I raised since she was a baby. When Dr. Catahagan told me, I remember I was wondering what was going to happen to my parents because they're elderly and I kind of take care of them.
How'd your day go?
It went good. My daughter was pretty shocked. You know, and my husband, I had to kind of hold him up. Excuse me. Dr. Catahagan said that I would be her lifetime patient. She is always going to be there. They're all there for me. You know, the people are like your family. It's like they gave me part of their energy. And that compassion, that love, you'll get through it. I mean, all of those, the touching, that hands-on thing, it gives you strength because there's times I look back at it and I know it's God and the hospital staff that got me through this.
We are very blessed in PeaceHealth at large. Things are never status quo. Number one is the patient, wherever that may be. We strive to keep ahead of the curve. Innovative technologies from imaging to cath labs to information systems.
In most of our hospital operations, what we look at is what are the critical care tests, what lab work do those physicians need to support those patients. I like being part of an organization that is on the cutting edge. And being on the cutting edge, whether it's you're talking about an EMR or pneumatic tubes or new instrumentations in the lab, what it has allowed us to do is to do diagnostic work more quickly. The new Sacred Heart at Riverbend dominates the skyline here in this area. It's a beautiful facility.
It's a building that I think will create an environment where people really can do their best work. A place to build on this idea of mission, values, exceptional medicine, compassionate care. Behind the walls, however, are very high technology systems. These are systems that you won't find in very many hospitals in the United States. And you can see this in things like the operating rooms at Riverbend.
When I was a child, when somebody was dying, everybody was bringing food over, people were sitting with the family. That's no longer the case in our country for the most part. No One Dies Alone comes out of the fact that I was working night shift on 3 Main. It was midnight, I had 6 patients, and I walked into this man's room and he said, "Will you stay with me?" He wasn't in pain. And I said, "Okay, I'll come back as soon as I see my other patients." By the time I got back to be with that man, and I had promised him I would come back, he had died. I was so upset. The most simple request. I couldn't do anything about it. I was not there. No one should die without seeing a loving face before them. So it was an idea about having people volunteer to be with people who are alone and dying in the hospital. We're there for those who have no one.
My great-uncle, Woodrow Morrison, was actually born on the beach here in a tent in 1911. That was the year Heidelberg was founded. My dad's Haida name is Keith John, but his nickname was Buster. And my dad lived a tough life when we were young kids. I remember I was living down here in a little house, my husband and I, and the doctor had called during the night and said that my father had some internal bleeding. And he said that he could never drink again. My dad had never had another drink since. He was able to take all his kids and grandkids out and teach them where to go and how to fish, and it was pretty nice. And he was free and clear of cancer for just over 3 years. And all of a sudden, it came back with a vengeance. And we took care of him. But in the end, my dad's arm, the cancer ate the bones. It was really hard to lift him without hurting him, you know. And so we took him to Ketchikan. Oh, they were wonderful. I don't think I ever left the hospital. It wasn't home, but it was more like home than a lot of places. Very, very, very good people. Over there, I knew he wasn't hurting. Oh, that night of my dad's passing, one of the nurses came in and she said, "Even though your dad's not awake, he can hear you." And I held his hand and I told him, "I know how tough you are. It's too much for us now to see you hurting and suffering and not being able to go fish." I actually took my grandson yesterday, and I was thinking the whole time, my dad is able to fish wherever now. You know, he's out there fishing somewhere.
The Sisters of St. Joseph, they are the inspiration. They're the keepers of the flame. They're the people who perpetuate this place by their ability to make all of us realize why we're here and who we're here for.
Bring it to Grandma. Bring it to Grandma.
You know, except for the grace of God, there go I. And I think perhaps that's one of the things that motivates us here at PeaceHealth is this sense of solidarity.
All right, honey.
Is there a spirit that transcends a particular religion that happens in these buildings? Absolutely. I think that you see the spirit of caregiving that's shining in every person's eyes. All of us are united in our desire to take the best care. So there is this spirit of healing and caring and trying to cure and help and comfort that does pervade everything, and it's really very moving.